Right. So I have some slides. Obviously, as we go through them, like I said, I'll be chatting with you guys and asking questions. So obviously, I'm just assuming you guys are here for developing your skills in clinical research. Maybe it's regulatory affairs or just generally medical product development. Is this where you guys are? Can you guys type in yes in the chat or say yes? It's a small group, so I don't mind if everybody says yes. I'm here for the
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So you guys are all in the right place. Um, so one thing we come on all these info sessions and then people are like distracted, checking Instagram or Facebook. I'm actually going to turn off my phone myself, just so we can be focused. Grab a drink. I got my drink right with me. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. If you want to take some notes, obviously we'll share the slides with you guys after this session. Um, like we said, get rid of distractions, cell phones, Facebook, Instagram, social media. Okay, and then this is the coolest part. Bring one emotion to the table. I think if you bring an emotion to the table, you can kind of feel that as we go through this session together. Maybe you're curious about what opportunities are there in medical product development, or how can you actually leverage a program like this to fit your needs. Whatever that might be, you're excited, happy, new beginnings, new information. Maybe you feel courageous to embark on a new journey, whatever the emotion is. I'd encourage you guys to bring it to the table. All right. So I know Tiffany kind of shared with us a little bit about her hardest part of developing a career in medical product development. She works in medical devices, and then she's kind of trying to figure out how long to stay at a company, and then when do you know you're supposed to make the leap, right? So that is definitely a challenge and a question that I've asked myself multiple times, and I still do. It's part of your personal and professional development, and you kind of have to sometimes know that you need to take the leap and move on. For me, it was moving from Abbott, from being a very comfortable role to a startup, but very uncomfortable role, was a huge leap. I'm happy to talk about that experience. But I want to hear from you guys. What's the hardest part for you when it comes to developing a career in medical product development?
I'll go. I'm actually a clinical research coordinator for a medical device company. And what I think it is right now is I've seen it all over with a lot of clinical research companies that some of them are being acquired by bigger companies. And the company I'm with, that's what they're currently going through. And what I'm looking at is it's great to have the roles that you see, which is like when you're starting out, which is a CTA or a clinical research coordinator. But of course, you need certain amount of experience and skills to get certain roles. I am pretty blessed that I got this role. But my main thing is I keep looking at like, oh, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but sometimes I'm like, I want more work. And I'm always trying to figure like, oh, what can I ask them about? I'm trying to keep that drive of staying hungry for new opportunities. And I think that's the part when it comes to developing, starting out, or even like pursuing even more. I think that's one of the things to keep in mind when you're trying to develop yourself is to keep that hunger, that drive of wanting to learn more. Is that the right track to keep in order to stay focused?
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, yeah, I think asking for more is definitely like the right thing in my mind to do if that's what you want. Um, I think sometimes you need to know what to ask for, and you may not know that, right?
Exactly.
So that's something you have to figure out as you navigate through an organization. And there's many ways to do that. One way to do this is talking to other people in your company to see what they do for a living. What are their roles? What does their day look like? Another way is to be in a program like this where you kind of get exposed to unique opportunities, and maybe yes, you're doing clinical research coordinator, but maybe your interest is in regulatory affairs, and maybe that's kind of where things take you. And those things are a little bit challenging when you're working at a company where you kind of hired for a specific role and then transitioning into a new role
Hmm.
may not be as straightforward, and you may need to move to a different organization in order to be able to do that. Yeah, so that's that. That's good. Thank you for sharing. What about Farida and Simran? And I don't know if we lost Niloy, if he's still with us. So I can't. The Zoom is a
I'm
little
here.
strange. You're here. Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So what about you, the three of you? What's been the hardest part for you? Uh,
Yes. Hi, Kunal. Hi, everyone. For me, it would be like what you said. I think it's just lack of exposure and like not knowing much about the industry. Like even to this day, I feel like, I don't know enough. I've only been out of my undergrad for 2 years now, and I knew nothing about clinical research or biotech or anything or what was even possible for me going forward when I graduated. So I would say that's been the biggest struggle for me is just gaining more knowledge, more exposure about what I can actually do and contribute.
right.
For
Right.
me, it's the same, especially when COVID hit all my upper division and my undergrad, like, it was all online. So it's really hard to like,
Mhm.
get the in-person experience, especially when companies say entry level and there's like all experiences required. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that with COVID throwing off a lot of your educational years, right? Because of having to just suddenly move online. Yeah. What about you, Farida? Do you want anything to add to this?
No, nothing special. It's just pursuing my with further education.
Okay, good. Um, I will say that this program is a good portion of this program is online. And a lot because a lot of the students are also like about 70% of the students in this program have full-time jobs. Another 30% are in transition. They either had a job, they moved to a new country to start a new career, or they have just decided to. I have one student in class, and he's intentionally decided to only go part time with his work because he wants to focus more on the classes and learn. So obviously, every person is going to be different, but we do have a lot of in-person opportunities that we are doing outside of class. So we just set up. This is the first year we did the MPDM, which is the Medical Product Development Management Student Council. And we kind of did a week event on a weekend. We had a picnic with all the students. Next week, we have a graduation celebration for the graduates that are graduating. It's actually going to be at my house. And then we're in the process of, doing hikes, in the Bay Area. And the idea with the hikes is to invite CEOs, CEOs, directors, VPs in clinical trials, in regulatory affairs, in medical product development, product managers to these hikes with us, so then we can actually have a conversation with them about their work and really use that as a networking opportunity to meet other cool people because we live in a very rich diverse, like rich as in like a diverse set of people doing a lot of different things in this sector. Okay, so what are your expectations from today? Like, what would be like a win at the end of this presentation? What is it that you want to know?
What's needed for the application? How much is the fees?
Got it. Okay, that's not very hard, but yes, I can definitely share that with you. And yeah, so the application we'll talk about that. But and then that will be towards the end. But I'm just happy to give you a quick snippet. I don't quote me on the exact amount, but the application fee itself is $70 that you go through Cal State Apply. Where you do submit your application initially, and then you get your application to San Jose State through that process. So Cal State Apply is the website to apply, and then the tuition for this program, is about $33,000 for the 2 years for your master's degree. It does. We've had some changes in tuition recently, so it's still in the ballpark, of what I just shared. What
And,
other expectations? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and how old is, I mean, how new is this program or how old
Oh,
is
how old? This program has been going on for almost 13 years, since 2010, so 14 years. It's been going on for a while. So we've had about, I would say, 175 students that have, or maybe closer to, yeah, 175, at least 175 that I can think of, that we've kept track of, that have at least graduated from this program.
So now things are changing, AI is adding up and all those stuff. Will this change the program?
Whether with the AI stuff, is that your question?
Yeah, all this technology is coming up.
Yeah, so we do have a class that's offered by a professor in computer science as part of this program. It's a bioinformatics class. Yes, we have some guest lecturers that come and talk about AI in this class. We don't have a dedicated class for AI itself. Although, the way our program is designed, we have a series of guest lecturers that we invite from time to time. So just this past semester, we had about 8 guest lecturers, 6 to 8, I would say, probably 8, just talking about a variety of topics. You know, I think I would say this program is definitely foundational. Like, the way clinical trials are done is not changing as rapidly as AI. Yes. So, for example, I'll give you guys an example. When we're doing clinical research, yes, you can do Facebook marketing to recruit patients, but the proven method to do patient recruitment is to really have a conversation between the investigator and the patient, and make sure the patient understands what this clinical trial is about, and then the patient consents. I'm working on a project right now, and unfortunately, the doctor doesn't talk to the patient about the clinical trial. So if the doctor isn't talking to the patient, and then there's this third party doing Facebook ads, it just doesn't work. So yeah, we could teach you guys how to do Facebook ads in this program, and I'm not saying we do that, but it's not going to solve the core issues that our world is facing today. Is really figuring out how can we enable, like, still not move away from our fundamentals. Like, we still leverage technology, but we still have to kind of work with other human beings to move our projects forward.
So is this somewhat similar to MPH?
It's not. MPH is only public health, master's in public health. This program is medical product development. So we do medical devices and drugs. And how do you get those products on the market? What does that life cycle look like, right? So there's legal considerations, there's clinical trials, there's regulatory affairs, there's quality, there's statistics. And then there is just the overall umbrella of medical product development, where you have other cross-functional teams such as marketing, sales, finance, legal, which all support the whole medical product life cycle. So we kind of cover all those things. We're not focused prime just with public health. MPH is a very niche program that's only in public health. We do everything. So we work with students that are in the class work with nonprofits, for-profits, government agencies, so all three. And the areas where they work with are developing new medical products or working on existing medical products that are already on the market.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I say medical products, I mean drugs, which is pharmaceuticals, and biologics, which are biological, drugs basically, and then medical devices. So drugs and devices, I think, if you just want to categorize into two things for medical products. But yeah, to your point, AI. So yeah, so medical devices, for example, are these days like the company I was telling you guys about that I work at as a startup. It was an organization that used machine learning to create a medical product or medical device, in this case, to measure seizures, or to diagnose seizures, basically, specifically to diagnose status epilepticus in patients. So yeah, so there is that component, but they still had to go through clinical trials, and they still had to work with the FDA, and those things are not going to change, right? So we don't have a we do focus on those fundamentals, is what I'm trying to get to. So the 510(k) process with the FDA, that hasn't changed in years, or the pre-market approval process. You still have to go through those steps to get your products on the Yeah? Does that answer your questions?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Feel free to ask more as we move forward. Okay, so we'll keep moving. Simran, anything from you? Anything? I think you already spoke, so we can just keep going. And Niloy, I think, I don't know if he's still here or gone. Because I can't see everybody on Zoom, so I missed the sequence. Okay, so we're going to cover three things in this info session. We're going to talk about the future of medicine and healthcare trends. So that's Farida that you were asking some questions around it. So we'll cover these three things around that. Then for the second part of our info session, I'm going to talk about some soft skills that you need to have. And those soft skills are really needed no matter which part of the sector you work in or the industry you work in. We'll definitely tailor this conversation to the medical product development sector, but my intent here is for you to leave with some information that you can then apply in whatever you're doing today. And then finally, we will do a real world class. We'll create a clinical trial timeline, and I'll show you guys how to create timelines in less than 10 minutes. So we'll be doing those three things, and then towards the end, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about the program, and then I can hang out more for more questions and so on. How does that sound like a plan? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
So healthcare trends. Let me see. Okay, so in the last several years, as we just had Simran, is that right? Simran, was that you or was it Farida? Farida was just mentioning about AI. Obviously, we're seeing a huge spike in AI, right? This is the future. We are in the future, but I still believe in the fundamentals being strong. But yes, we are seeing a shift in how medical products are being developed, and also the current medical products that are going to be displaced by these newer products that are going to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms in the healthcare sector. We're seeing a huge boom in this area, as you can see, based on the search in the last 15 years. There's a 7,700% growth, 7,700% growth in the last 15 years. So that's definitely like a trending space. And then the second thing is Internet of Things. A lot of devices these days or medical products allow patients to track things in real time. So we do real-time health monitoring and access to data. It's all happening in real time. So for example, if you guys have an Apple Watch, probably a lot of things are getting like VO2 max. It's it's basically how much oxygen your lungs can process. That your watch can do it. Like, even though it's not a medical device, it can still do it. But we're going to start seeing more and more of these medical real-time healthcare monitoring aspects being part of healthcare. And the devices are going to talk to each other and talk to our computers. They already are. If they, so CGM, which is a continuous blood glucose monitor, is another great example. And it's kind of really prevalent with the number of metabolic diseases we have today. Diabetes, for example, is rampant. CGM does provide, continuous blood glucose monitors do provide patients with real-time healthcare monitoring. So we do cover information like that, not just the information, but also how do you create a regulatory strategy to get your medical product approved and cleared by the FDA. For products that are able to do real-time healthcare monitoring. And yes, there's been an 8,500% growth in the last 15 years. So with that being said, we are also seeing AI play a huge role in providing personalized approach. I was on a clinical study where patients were, like little kids, were being given seizure drugs. So because if they had a seizure, they were given a drug. Turns out that if you're under 16, pretty much all the patients got the same dosage of drugs, which doesn't make any sense. If you're a 4-year-old, your dosage for a seizure drug should be different than if you're a 13-year-old, because just given how your body mass is just different. And there was a clinical trial that was NIH sponsored that allowed doctors to adjust dosage for drugs. So we're seeing more and more of such approaches in research and medical product development sector. Not too long ago, I spoke with the VP of Mercy Research. Mercy is a large hospital system in St. Louis, Missouri, or in Missouri. They have about 40 hospitals. And I was talking to the head of research, and she was mentioning that they actually, one of her direct reports just focuses on projects that are on precision and personalized medicine. So like large institutions are really creating these departments that just focus on precision and personalized medicine. So some of the questions that are getting answered through the AI are as follows. How does AI use data from wearables and healthcare monitoring sensors, right? How does AI improve the point of care diagnostics like ultrasound? We talked about continuous blood glucose monitors. How can AI make medical imaging more efficient and accurate? So doctors do medical images like CT scan, X-ray, MRI. Can AI help with diagnosis of cancer? So a lot of times the cancer patients have medical images taken at baseline, and then they get the drug, and then they have another image in 6 weeks, and another image in 12 weeks, and another image in 18 weeks to see if the tumor has progressed. One way to know that is to really look at the size of the tumor with the naked eye. But now AI can do that work for you. It can look at the size of tumor. It can really look at things that a human eye cannot, and be able to measure or make tumor measurements for you, for example, for cancer treatment and diagnosis. And then finally, there is an opportunity to allow AI to increase the rate of drug discovery. How do we have more drugs? How do we have the right drugs in our clinical trials and into the commercial space, rather than just working on just the slow and steady process of identifying drugs? So a lot of places where AI plays a huge role. So here's an example. I don't know if you guys have heard of Aura Ring. Farida, yes, please, go for it.
Sorry, suddenly question is, I have a burning question. You said you have to apply through the Cal State?
Yes. Cal State Apply. That's the website through which you begin your application, where you pay your $70 fee. This San Jose State University is part of the Cal State, like California State University, basically. So there's multiple universities underneath CSU. SJSU is one of them. So you submit your application on Cal State Apply. Just search on Google, or I can show it to you towards the end of this session.
Yeah, if you can put it in the chat.
Okay, I'll do it if it's okay. I just want to keep moving, but I will do that in a second.
Okay.
Because
yeah, thank you.
I'll have to minimize my screen to be able to do that. Okay, so Aura Ring. Have you guys heard of Aura Ring? Has anybody heard? Yes, no? If you guys can speak up, that'd be best, because I can't see you. Yeah, you have?
Yes.
What does it do for Farida? What does the Aura Ring do?
It changes color as per your mood and your aura and around your body and things like that, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, maybe it's different ring.
Yeah, it's a different ring. It's not AURA, but it's OURA. And maybe the one you're talking about is an Aura, AURA.
Yes.
I'm not sure. But OURA, this ring, is actually a cool medical product. Well, I don't know if they classify it as a medical product, because you can actually purchase it off the shelf. But they are working on clinical trials. What it does is it measures, it keeps track of your sleep and your sleep patterns, and then makes recommendations on whether you're getting enough sleep or not, which is a really cool technology. Like a ring can do that. But another application that they've come up with is knowing the women's like menstrual cycles, or like when your body temperature goes up. The ring will sense that. So rather than you having to do a test, or like if you're ovulating or anything like that, the women don't need to do that. You could actually get those results through this ring and through this app, and it will know based on your body temperature, which I thought was like a really cool application that they had for this ring. I actually don't know where they are on clinical trials today, but I know that's an application that they were working on. Again, this is another example of real like healthcare monitoring of products that are already on the market, but now they're kind of going into this healthcare sector to really take market share from other organizations that haven't been using technology in their medical products.
Yeah, I've heard of that ring before. I I I'm still on the fence on certain things just because of being in the generation of products like coming out versus people that's like, oh, it's right there. So I'm still kind of leery of products
Yeah,
just because. But yeah, I have heard of the rings. I do think
yeah,
though, what is it? With Apple, I think what freaked me out the most was I don't have Apple, but I remember when they had the latest advertisement for the watch where it said it could track like women's PMS cycles and
I
I'm like
see.
I'm like I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you don't like it. Yeah, and I am with you on like the technology piece, but I think going back to what Farida said, I think we need to not be afraid of it and embrace it, but really
Yeah.
be suspicious, not suspicious, but like look at it from
Because
like, okay, does this make sense, and is
yeah.
this right? And I personally, I am on the, I'm probably they have this bell curve where people are on the left
Mhm.
and right. I'm on the right hand side personally. And I think in the medical product sector, obviously, I think, yeah, there's going to be people that are going to be accelerating and trying to innovate things.
Mhm.
But I also think there's medical products already on the market that could be improved just by better
Mhm.
design, not necessarily
Mhm.
technology, just better design, and could serve patients in a very different way.
I'm in the middle since since
There
I've
you
been
go.
since I've
Yeah.
been working with the medical devices. I'm in the middle, and it's mainly because with my company we work with cardiac and lung, so it's
Oh,
very
cool.
interesting to see the
Yeah.
algorithm how it's basically helping people in terms of tracking to see if they can capture the same images that the healthcare professionals, usually takes like quite a bit of time, but this type of software, it's supposed to help in the guidance of it. So I think it's actually quite remarkable
Cool.
because, some people
What
take
is
a
the
lot of
disease
years.
state? What's the
Huh?
what's the disease state?
The disease state. Well, let's see. For the cardiac, let's see here. I think for the cardiac, I think it can help in terms of working with heart attack, strokes, and then lung would be like respiratory arrest, any excess fluid they see. I've kind of witnessed some of these things, so it's been quite interesting. I think the most interesting part for me though was like one day they were working on something else and I actually was hearing the subject's heartbeat. I was like, oh, this is
Yeah,
a lot different because I'm used to hearing it through a stethoscope in the past. So just hearing
right.
it straight out was like, whoa.
Are you a nurse, Tiffany, by any chance?
No, I'm not.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for sharing
You're welcome.
your experience. Perfect. Yeah, so yeah, I think there's going to be changes, but I would still argue that the fundamentals are not going away anytime soon. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about the wages. Obviously, making money is important. Personally, I think people, if they're going to go through a program like this, you do want to come out on the other side, changing the way you have your career. And financially, it's meaningful for you. So here are the median wages. This is across the United States. This data is from the Department of Labor, and it's actually a couple of years old. I haven't refreshed this particular slide yet. But yeah, the median annual wages were $120,000 for hospitals. For governments, it was $117,000. And then outpatient centers, physician offices around 100,000. So this is kind of the median. I would argue that in the Bay Area, you're going to you're going to see things closer to this amount. I just have one student that's graduating this semester in May, like next week, he's graduating. And he just got an offer from, I think did he say Johnson and Johnson? Yeah, I think it was Johnson and Johnson for $105,000 and a 10% bonus, which kind of validates some of the numbers that we've seen. Here's another slide. Again, similar dollars, as you can see, the median. This is again from the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, as you can see in the bottom. I love the data by the government because it is the most non-biased data that you can ever find anywhere on the internet. At least I would think, compared to like for-profit organizations just creating graphs and so on. But yeah, this is U.S. Department of Labor. It says the medical and health services manager, which is kind of what people graduating from this program are classified as. They make about median. So median means half the people make less than 101,000, and then the other half make more than 101,000. So that's kind of the idea here. And compared to other occupations, it's significant. It's more than double. But this is by far my favorite slide. Percent change in employment from 2020 to 2030. There's a huge change in medical and health services manager. It's a 32% increase compared to other occupations, which are not actually growing that much. And I always have people telling me like, oh, there's layoffs in 2024. But yeah, things are going to be different in 2026 when you guys, if you decide to apply and graduate. But even if you were graduating today, and I told you guys a story about this student that's just graduating, he got a job. He was laid off, and then he got a job in a few months. And he wasn't actively looking for jobs because he wanted to focus on his classes and finish up. But yeah, I think there is opportunities, and I think if you're really good at what you do, there's always going to be opportunities, I feel. And then I also know there's companies that are giving out bonuses even when the market is on the downturn, because there are medical products are been very successful, and hence they are rewarding their employees with stocks or stock options or more more money. So again, but focusing on the growth, the sector itself is seeing a huge growth. So with that being said, I want to ask you guys another question. What about the future do you find to be most exciting?
How we can help people still survive in this world with different means of getting them help in different ways. That's the main thing I still hold dear to my heart, is because I know with devices and therapies, there's always other options out there. And that was one of the reasons why I was really looking a lot towards clinical research, because there's so many options for people when they think that the one option is not available. I think clinical research gives you that opportunity to know, hey, there's something else out there. So
Absolutely.
that's what I look forward to.
That's such an important point. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, yes, it doesn't mean that those options are going to work for you, but there are options, right? Because they're still in clinical trials. But yes, it does give you an opportunity to serve those patients. No, I just realized you were muted, which if you were trying to say something, I'm sorry. You couldn't speak up. But here's your chance.
I wasn't saying anything actually. But what I would say though is definitely just further advancing. Me personally, I'm just trying to figure out my future, just info for here, so that's why.
Yeah. So your comment is, how does your career fit into this? Is that what you were saying?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Based on what I just shared, is there anything else from anybody on the call about the future as it relates to medical product development that you find to be exciting or cool?
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
So, the medicine will be more accessible, it will be more transparent with all this technology, more integrated, international wise, I believe it will be more transparent now.
Yeah. So you're saying the medical technology landscape will be more transparent as we kind of move forward in the next.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's the direction we're headed as a society in general, but it's going to be a really long time. But yeah, you're right. That's kind of the goal. Tiffany, were you going to say anything else?
No, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
No, I was basically thinking about specific specialties. I've noticed, of course, with, like I said, heart, lung, I wonder, will there be developments of AI for other organs such as brain, liver, kidney, stomach even? I'm just wondering if that's going to be a thing in the future where they're going to have other AI developments for those specific organs as well.
I bet there already are. Like I told you about a brain for measuring EEG signals, which is the brain waves.
Mm-hmm.
An EEG, and that's the organization I was working at, a startup that just does that. They are using machine learning algorithms, and they've created this amazing medical product that will measure your brain waves
Wow.
in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Literally plug it in, and in 5 minutes, you get a result of your brain waves.
That's
Something
very advanced.
that takes like 4 hours for an EEG technician to come in and
Yeah,
actually get it set up.
that's very advanced. That's ooh. That means that can help with when they're doing kind of sleep studies too, right? So they
That's
can.
right. Yeah. Sleep studies. Yeah. I bet there's stuff in the sleep studies that I'm not aware of. But yeah, there's a lot of sleep studies going on everywhere, which
Because
is kind of why I wanted to talk about the Aura Ring, right? And
uh-huh.
kind of the sleep market, just giving you guys like different insights on different types of medical products that are out there.
Okay.
So next up, I want to talk about skill sets. I think you get paid for two things. Obviously, you get paid for solving problems, and then also you need to have the right skills to succeed. And I kind of was looking on, again, the government website to see what kind of skills do these people with natural science manager type of roles have, right? And the government website has these 6 skills that you need to succeed in this role: analytical skills, communication skills, detail-oriented, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and technical skills. If you look at this list carefully, then the middle 4, communication, detail-oriented, interpersonal, and leadership, really, maybe detail-oriented to a good extent, they're really working with other human beings. And how can you have better communication skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills? Well, those are really what is taking a lot of this role. Because you're not just the only person working on a medical product. You're actually working with a cross-functional team that's really contributing as a team towards launching a new medical product or working on an existing medical product. So with that being said, I want to focus only on communication skills today, but in this program, we really cover all these different skills through the different courses. So we've designed the courses to really hone in on these skill sets and then helping you develop these skill sets as we go through the program. So I want to talk about communication skills next. And I'll share with you about a cool book that I read a few years ago. It's called Exactly What to Say. And this author, Phil M. Jones, is the author of this book. And it's actually a really good book, very short read. And Phil has these 23 phrases that you can use in your communication at work or even at home to really have influence and impact. At the end of the day, we are trying to influence our colleagues, really bring about change in the world, right? So we were talking about this EEG device. Obviously, there's going to be challenges. Like people are used to using a certain product. People like me, I would say, and getting people to change can be very difficult. And I think that's kind of where you need strong communication skills. So in this book, Phil has 23 phrases. We're not going to do all 23 for today. We're just going to focus on 3 phrases. First phrase is, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to. The second phrase we're going to talk about is you have 3 options. And the third phrase is, what makes you say that? Okay, and we'll look at each of these in relatively good detail. So have you guys ever told anybody, hey, I'm just following up on my previous email? You sent an email to somebody, they never got back to you. Did you follow up with them using the word I'm following?
All the time, yes.
Yes.
A lot.
A lot. All right. Have you received an email that says I'm following?
Yes.
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 How does that make you feel? If somebody's following up with you, how do you feel?
I mean, when I get a follow-up email, it makes me feel good. In the sense because they especially if they respond back really quickly to my follow-up email, it lets me know that okay, they consider me and they're actually remembering me or thinking about the conversation that we had. They're being considerate of my time, knowing that I reached back out to them or they've reached back out to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. But most of the time, do you feel like people you follow up and do they get back to you right away, or do you think you're still following up for a bit longer?
Working in past job role at another biotech, it was a little uneasy at times. I was saying easy because I would feel like I was following up more than usual because they weren't responding in a timely manner, knowing that something needed to be done right away. And it could get very frustrating, especially
Right.
if you've used follow up in like several emails or you reattach the email that you sent that said you were following up.
Right, right. Exactly. So that just for that reason, Phil, what he recommends is not using the word follow-up, but you kind of say, hey, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to replying to my email below. And instead of using the word follow-up, because nobody likes to be followed up on for the most part. Some people are like, yeah, it's a good reminder, but somebody's like really tapping on your shoulder. What this phrase does is it gives the other person the benefit of doubt, or you're giving this person the benefit of doubt. It's like, okay, something must have come up in your life and you just couldn't get back to me, or you just wanted to think through the response and then reply back, but you just haven't had the chance to sit down and think through a response. So, when you apply for a job, you don't hear back. When you ask a question, you don't hear back. When you send a proposal for something, you don't hear back. Because people are not making decisions. So the way you get around that is what Phil recommends. And Phil is the author of this book. He says, use the phrase, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to. And that will get you a response in no time. Okay. The next phrase he recommends is giving people 3 options. A lot of times people struggle with like knowing what their options are or how should they proceed to solve that problem. As you remember, you may have heard me say early on, is like the reasons why you get paid at work is your skill sets and coming up with solutions. And part of coming up with solutions is coming up with options to give people. Okay. So Phil recommends giving people 3 options if you have a deadlock situation where you can't really you're at an impasse, or you're trying to make a proposal to someone and say, we need to maybe it's a new piece of technology that you're trying to explain to your team, or a new process maybe at your company that you want to implement. You could give people 3 options and say, first option, we keep doing the way we're doing it, but it's going to take us 3 months to finish this project. The second option is, well, we could do it a little faster, but it's going to cost us another $100,000, right? Or the third option is, let's just change the process a little bit and we won't be spending $100,000. Now we'll be only spending $20,000 and finishing this project on time, which is the preferred choice. So giving people those 3 options really gets them thinking about, okay, here are the choices that I have. Does it mean people will select one of the options? Maybe, maybe not. What I have seen happens a lot of times is that the internal teams will come up with a variation of these 3 options. So it might be a combination of option 2 or 3, or maybe it's just option 3 by itself, but almost never the first option. I also think laying down the options really creates a cool way of like saying, okay, I thought through this problem. Here's how I think we should solve it, right? So that's what Phil says, giving people 3 options. Okay. Any comments or thoughts on this? And then finally, people will challenge you on things that they don't really know much about. So for example, a doctor may say, this treatment is not working on our patients. Or somebody will say, your budget is too high for our services, or you don't have the skills. Especially if you're currently working professionally, somebody may say, oh, you don't have the, your boss may say you don't have the skills for this role. So rather than just feeling dejected and just leaving the room, you can actually have a conversation. And the way you do that is by asking the question, what makes you say that? So it's a very non-defensive way of really continuing the conversation, because people may have some preconceived notions about certain things that you have no idea about. So if you ask the question, what makes you say that, it encourages them to share more details, which then you can use to further the conversation. Okay, so those are the 3 phrases that Phil recommends. I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to using this phrase instead of the follow-up. giving people three options, terrible option, not so great option, and preferred choice, and then using the phrase, what makes you say that, if somebody is kind of pushing you in one direction.
I have a question for that
Yeah,
last one that you were saying, what makes you say that? What if, what if I'm thinking right now, what if you applied for a role and you didn't use exactly those words, but you asked, if you can kindly let me know, like, what is it I need to work on to like strengthen my application? And then they tell you, oh no, your application was great. It was wonderful. Like your skills are wonderful. And it's like, wait, well, where do I go from here? Like I always, thought during that time when I was looking that that
yeah,
was the most stressful process because I said, I don't even know what I need to work on. I have no idea. I
yeah,
said, they said my application was fine. But the
yeah,
main thing they did say is like, there's just some skills that you're missing.
yeah,
And, or they'll tell me, oh, there was another candidate that beat you like by a hair. And it's like, what was that? So it's one of those things when you have those situations, would that still be well, for me, it seemed like when I had that situation that I didn't know how to even continue the conversation anymore because at the same
yeah.
time, I felt like I had an answer, but at the same time, I didn't, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. So what you're saying is they kind of tell you you're great, but they still didn't select you for the role. And
Yeah,
and then you're kind of stuck because you didn't really get any useful feedback from that discussion.
yeah,
And then the conversation just ends.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you really need to first you need to create a um, safe environment to have that conversation with the other
Hmm.
person. If you come off very defensive or aggressive, then they're probably not going to open up, right? Because then they're not wanted. In my experience, most of the times in those kind of situations, it's really the hiring manager that feels good about one person or another, right? And they're
Got it.
making a decision based on intuition if they were very close.
Okay.
But I think if they say, yeah, you were great, and say thank you, I really appreciate you saying kind things about me. But what would be really helpful if can we set up a 15-minute call where we can do a quick debrief and maybe you can give me some specific feedback on things that I can improve or some guidance on how do I kind of move from here this point on if I wanted to work in this role. And I think really in having that dialogue, right? And
Hmm.
I think you want to really be honest and say, I would really benefit if you did this. So, and I feel like most of the time people will be happy to do that. I just had a not a work related situation, but I had some, I'm a board chair at my son's nursery school, and I'm in the process of something, and then we didn't have good news, and then I was on the call with this guy, and I was like, okay, he's telling me the bad news. And I said, can we schedule a 15-minute debrief call tomorrow? And that's what I did. I scheduled a debrief call with him the next day. And it looks like, well, the reasons that they don't want to move forward are some of the reasons we can actually overcome, or the issues that they're having. So I think really kind of setting up some separate time can be helpful. And sometimes people are just not going to tell you anything. And in that case, you just move on. The next best thing you can do is really you can take an inventory of all the responses you gave during an interview and how could you have changed that, right? Because you don't want to go to the next interview and make the same mistakes. That's the worst thing you could do, right?
Yes. I'm
So
still here. I was listening.
yeah, so the way you overcome that is what I have done in a lot of my interviews is two things. I go to an interview, I I go through the process and then I come home and then I write down what went well, what didn't go well. I literally like write down things. And then I'm trying to get to the decision making phase or trying to figure things out. I actually plan things out, like saying, what if this person says this, and how will I respond? If this person says that, how will I respond? Right. And I think planning is kind of part of the winning strategy, really. And those are things you can control. And then finally, I would say in order to prepare for an interview, I think it's called the STAR format:
Yep.
situation, task, action, result. Um, I love using that format. And anytime somebody will ask me an interview question, I will answer that question in that format. I'll give them a situation, I'll give them a task. Sorry, I'll tell them this was the situation I was in. Here's what I was assigned. Here's the task I was assigned. Here's the action that I took, not the team, but here's exactly what I did. I will explain them what I did. And then what were the results based on the work I did. Okay.
I did that for a few of my interviews last year when I
Yeah.
was doing
How did
yeah.
that work out for you, Tiffany?
Well, I'm working for a great company right now.
There you go. All right.
But yeah, it worked really well because it's how you put it. Yeah, what is it? I always think about it also like critical thinking or like a lawyer has a case, basically same thing at the start. Like you're putting together that little story for them and breaking
Correct.
it down bit by bit. And I
Right.
think it really does help, especially if you can narrow it down to like two experiences that you're really proud of. It
Yeah.
really helps rather than going through your brain aimlessly trying to find it. So that's a tip to anyone that's like searching. Think of like two major experiences or
Yeah.
situations that you've had that really like you shined really bright like the stars and you felt good about it yourself and share that with the employer because they want to hear you talk about yourself in the most positive way. That's just
Absolutely.
my
I
opinion.
actually tell people to come up with 5 to 7 examples or situations. And they can be like little things, but definitely
Mhm.
come up with 5 to 7, but two also works. Two is better than none. And then
Yeah.
and then you can use any of those 4 or 5 or 2 examples in a variety of questions that get thrown at you, right? Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think it's a really powerful strategy to get through an interview. This particular phrase, what makes you say that? I think it works great, like in a negotiation environment, or even like talking to a colleague or somebody on your team that's like pushing back on something that you want them to do, or something that you know will work, but they don't have enough subject matter expertise, and then they're just like saying things that without really understanding the issue, right? So you could use that too. Okay, cool. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about with the phrases? Highly recommend this book if you're interested in learning more. Communication, developing communication skills is really a lifelong pursuit. And I'm really excited and proud that we cover a lot of that in this program through some of our classes through the School of College of Business. I keep getting confused between school or college. I think it's the College of Business. Because this is a cross-disciplinary course or program between our College of Science and then the College of Business. So yeah, I think yeah, that's kind of something that we cover in this program. But I highly recommend checking out that book. So now I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk about timelines, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to create timelines. So this is going to be more like a hands-on exercise. Uh, and the reason I have this is we're in the final part of our presentation, okay? And then we'll do the Cal State Apply. I'll show you guys how to do that, assuming I know how to do it, but I think I do. Project timelines. So the issue with project timelines is, at least in the field that we are in, medical product development, these timelines keep shifting for many reasons. Some of the common reasons are patient recruitment being slow in clinical trials because your protocol inclusion and exclusion criteria wasn't very well thought through, or it doesn't really match the real world, or the FDA kind of put the brakes on your plan and they don't agree with your strategy and they want you to do things differently, or it took longer for your R&D department to really put that product together for commercialization and so on, or there were some manufacturing delays and so on. So you definitely need timelines, and you can the issue with project timelines is the software is difficult to use. So I have used Excel for a long time, but then I've also used other timeline tools. Microsoft Project was one of them, and I found it very difficult for like a non-technical person to navigate on a Microsoft Project timeline and really making sense of it. Timelines are not presentable, so if you're presenting your timelines to a VP, then they want a beautiful timeline where they can visualize in one slide what is this about. If you give them a Microsoft Excel or a project timeline, they're going to not be happy, and they won't really understand what is it that you're trying to present. But then certain times you need a lot of detail on your timelines. If you're working with your project team, then you need a lot of detail because they want to know exactly when they're supposed to do what. Timelines are also difficult to maintain and update. So, there's a lot of dependencies on timelines. If you change one thing, how does it impact the other things? And then they need to be easy to understand. Like if I look at a timeline, I really want to make it super easy to follow what is this timeline. So my goal today on this third part of our conversation is as follows. I'm going to teach you how to create a timeline but using a software that's easy to use. You'll have a beautiful timeline. You will have all the details you need for your project team. It's quick and easy to update, and it's easy to follow once you created a timeline. Yeah. So give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Are you guys able to see my screen? I think you are, right? Yep. Okay, so let me just stop sharing my screen and
Yep, I could see it earlier.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So I'm just going to give me 1 second. I'm going to set the file up and then we could be on our way.
So how often is the application accepted? Like in the year, once in a year?
Only once. Yeah, once a year. We have our deadline coming up. July 1st is the absolute last day. And we're actually doing rolling admissions right now. We just need to, we can't, we have very limited time. So if you guys want to do it, it's only till July 1st is the absolute date. I wouldn't push it that far just because you have to get your recommendation letters, your statement of purpose, and so on, all done. So, so no, there's no spring. Unfortunately, we don't offer spring enrollment in this program.
And how many recommendation letters do you need?
Two. Yeah, you just need two for this. Yep. Okay. Did I answer your question for Farida? Is that right? Yeah, Farida. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm happy to chat more as we go through this. Okay. So here's the timeline. It's a simple Excel spreadsheet that I put together. Here are the different things. This is like really, honestly, it's like a clinical trial timeline. It just doesn't have a lot of the details, but it's good enough for our demonstration today. So some of the things that you do in a clinical trial is you develop a clinical trial protocol, you develop a budget for a protocol, you submit things to the ethics committee. So every clinical trial protocol has to go through an ethical committee for review, which is called the Institutional Review Board, IRB. You submit it to them, then you get the approval, then you schedule the training with your hospital or clinic, you conduct the training, you have your first patient enrolled, then you complete your patient recruitment, you analyze the data, and you publish your final report. So for this purpose, let's just say we have Farida developing the protocol, we have Tiffany making the budget, and we have Niloy. Is that right? N-E-I-L-O-Y? Is that right?
Yeah.
N-E-I-L-O-Y. Okay, perfect. And then we have Simran. Let's just say Niloy is managing all the IRB stuff. And then Simran.
Is this just an exercise or?
What was that?
This is just an exercise, right?
Oh, it's just an exercise. Yeah. I'm not signing you up to do anything. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Simran, you're going to do the training, and then first patient is going to be the site or the hospital. This is also sites, maybe all sites. We can say all sites. Data analysis can be Farida again, and then publishing the report can also be Farida. So Tiffany, we don't have a lot of things for you. You're just going to take care of the finances, which I think is still very important. Okay, so a number of days it's going to take to develop the protocol. Let's just say it takes 40 days to develop the protocol. It takes 5 days to develop the budget. It takes another 10 days to develop the IRB submission packet. It takes 1 day to submit it. It takes another 10 days to get approval. It takes 1 day to maybe it takes 5 days to schedule the training. It takes 1 day to conduct the training. And then you have your first patient in, and then your patient recruitment. Maybe this trial is going to be 450 days. So it's going to be several months. And then it takes another 20 days to do the analysis and another 20 days to do the report. Okay. So the way this works is you kind of put your start date. So you say equal. So today is the 14th of May, 2024, right? And let's see why There you go. So there's only one formula I'm going to teach you guys, okay? And this is the only formula you need to know when you're creating timelines. The formula is as follows: equal to work day, start date, comma, the number of working days. And what it does is it takes the start date and then it adds 40 working days to it. So it takes out the weekends and holidays. And then you get 9th of July as your end date, okay? We keep doing this. So now your next item is going to start on the 9th of July. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this formula and then we're just going to pull it over here, okay? And then we're going to pull this here, just like a drop down right here. So the formula basically got automatically copied. So we start on the 14th of May and we'll be done in next May. In a year's time, we will be done with our clinical trial, right? So it automatically did everything. I just had to use the formula one time, which is equals to work day, start day, comma, number of days. And then it did all its magic, okay? So say my timeline changes, now it's going to take me Eloy maybe instead of 10 days, it's going to take him 15 days. Then it automatically changes these dates. You guys see that? Say now patient recruitment is going to take 180 days. So it's going to automatically change things there, okay? So maybe data analysis is going to take 30 days. So then it's automatically going to change. So let's just say this is our final timeline. We are all happy with this and we move forward with, wanting to get approval from our CEO or our VP of Clinical Affairs. And we put this timeline in front of them, but they're like, this is too difficult for me to follow. And in this case, it's relatively easy because there aren't that many rows, but a typical clinical trial timeline can have several rows. So then you go to this really cool software called Office Timeline, okay? It's called officetimeline.com, and then you log in. You have to purchase the license for this, but it's not very expensive. Let's see if I can log in. Give me 1 second because I'm having some challenges with my second. Share my screen again in a second. I'm sharing again. So I'm logged into my Office Timeline. I just signed in. And then since I'm using a Mac, you can use a PC or a Mac. If I'm using a Mac, it's just work in a browser. And then make timelines now. Let's see what it does. So basically what we do is you do new and we do import data. We click on import from Excel. We click browse. Let's see where this takes me. Recent. So this is the file that we just created. I selected it, and I don't know why all the dates haven't populated it in here. Hopefully I saved it. Give me 1 second. I thought I saved it. I didn't save it. So give me 1 second. I may have not saved that file that we were working on. That's it. I didn't save it. Okay, so we're going to go back, browse another file. There you go. So we have all our dates that we just put in. We have your names here and all of the good stuff, start date, end date, and we're going to finish our project next year in July. Then you hit next, start date, end date, and what the title is, right? Then you click next, and then you have all your different tasks and start date, end date, all the same stuff, right? It's not letting me because I think I have more than 10 tasks, and if it's a free software, it only lets me do 9 things. So let's just use 9 things, and then I'm going to click import. And then it imported all the pieces that I put in. And let's just say submitting to the IRB is a big deal, and we're going to give it a red flag. And then obviously patient recruitment is always a big deal. So you're going to give it a green flag. Okay. And then that's it. So we do that. And then all you have to do is click on the timeline tab. We're going to name is my clinical trial timeline. And voila. Do you guys see this beautiful timeline that you can now present to your senior leadership?
Very nice.
Yes.
And then you can actually download this in PowerPoint, PNG, if you want an image. So you do download as PowerPoint. And all you have to do is once it downloads it, you just take that slide. So here's the downloaded file. And there you go. Cool. So I find this tool really useful to create timelines for senior leadership and just for the project team also. So if somebody wants all the details, they can look at the Excel sheet. But if you wanted to only focus on all the main pieces, then you can just do it this way. Yeah. All right. So that brings us towards the end of this discussion, really. Here is the tuition. You guys asked for it early on. Farida, I think maybe it was you or Simran, I can't remember, one of you. So next year, the tuition is going to be $35,690. And then the following year, it's going to be $37,474. It's a 13-course program, 35 units. It's really designed for working professionals. So I actually do recommend like people have a job outside your class because you can actually apply a lot of the things that you're learning. It doesn't mean you need a job, but it's really helpful to have a job because things can make more sense when you are actually in a work environment and using some of the things that we're learning in class at work. It's a 2-year program. Overall, here are the different courses. I'll walk you guys through these different courses. If you bear with me, this is super useful and important. So you really understand what is it that we're going to do. So year 1, fall semester, we have the 281A class, which has a graduate written writing assignment. It's called the Clinical Development Seminar 1 class, but what we really teach in that class is designing clinical trials. How do you design a clinical trial? And that is a huge process in and by itself, and we cover that in this class. Then we have the Developing and Managing People, taught by Professor Mike Hill. This is the Biz 210 class. And then we have Regulatory Affairs 1, Biopharmaceutical. So if you remember when we started all this discussion, I was telling you guys there's a biopharmaceutical component to it, and then there is the medical device component to it. So this class is taught by Professor Sheldon Mullins in the fall semester. And then in the spring, we have the Clinical Development 2 seminar, which is on clinical operations. So as you remember, the 281A, we did designing clinical trials, but then now we talk about how do you execute a clinical trial that's already been designed. So that's what we do in the 281B class. Then we have a project management class. It's a 3-unit course, SMPD 202T, followed by Regulatory Affairs 2, which is a medical device diagnostic class. So here we talk about all the FDA regulations as they relate to drugs. Here we talk about FDA regulations as it relates to devices. We have a lot of guest lecturers, at least in this class right here, in this class. And then we have a 1-unit class it's a research/practicum. We're changing this class a little bit. This year we have a new instructor that's teaching it who has 20 years of experience. His name is Dr. David Rutledge. He used to be in academics, and then he worked for 20 years at Abbott Labs as a director there. And then he has his own consulting company. So he has a lot of real-world experience doing medical product projects. So he's been teaching this class. And then we move to year 2, where we have a clinical trial management class 289A. This is taught by Vivan Tran. Vivan was a student in this program, and it was a student back in 2010. And then she's actually now an instructor in the class. She teaches pharmacovigilance and safety in this class, the 289A. And then we have the business law and ethics class. This is taught by Professor Ash Padma. He's part of the business College of Business. And then we have Statistical Methods in Clinical Trials taught by Dr. Suleika Anand from the College of Science. Then we have the 289B. This is the final capstone project. One of the things that we've started to do in the last couple of years is really having students publish a paper in a journal, like a real journal. Like we have one student that's going to be hopefully publishing in Association of Clinical Research Professionals. He did an amazing project, so he's working on that. We had another student that has done like ethics and AI as that topic, so they're working on finding a public publisher right now, but they've completed their paper. So different topics that different students pursue in this final course. And then we have Managing Medical Product Development program. This is kind of an overarching course for all the different cross-functional areas that we don't really cover in the other classes. But like, how do you come up with a medical need, and then how does those medical products get developed through that process? This is taught by Professor Lumba, part of the Business College of Business. And then we have finally the bioinformatics class of drug and device development, SMPD 287. So these are all the classes that are offered in this program. So I'll pause there for a second to see what questions I can answer for you.
So they're all only evening or weekends or online?
Actually, at the moment, we don't have any classes on the weekends based on student feedback. They are not all online. There are some classes that are a hybrid class. So they are in person, maybe out of the 10 lectures that a class may have, 3 classes might be in person. Especially year 1 classes, there's a lot of in person just so we can get the students organized a little bit.
But are they all evening or are they
all evening after 6. Yes. Except Mike Hill. For this particular class, Managing People, he does like to teach the class on a Saturday. I think his is the only class where he has some like 3 or 4 lectures on a Saturday morning. But then there's no other Saturday class. So I do take that back. I'm sorry, no one. But yeah, everything is evening. 6 p.m. is when our class starts. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there's no class on Friday. And then if you're taking 3 classes, you'll only have classes 3 days a week, not 4 days a week. So that's kind of the schedule. Does that answer your question?
So like which 3 days a week usually?
What days, what?
Yeah, which 3 days a week if I'm taking 3 unit classes?
It depends, right? Whether you're year 1 or year 2.
Year 1 usually?
Year 1. When your class will be on what days of the week? Is that your question?
Yeah. You said 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days a week. So I have to check it kind of changes year to year. So, I think you should be available Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, honestly, because we may have a guest lecture on another day where you don't have class. Obviously, your attendance is optional. But we're not trying to have classes every single day of that week. So most likely 3 days a week but I don't know which day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think you should plan for those 3. We will publish the schedule in advance so you kind of know when it is, so you're not like caught off guard. Why are you asking me that question? What's prompting you? Can you tell me a little bit?
Just curious.
I'm sorry, just what?
Just curious.
Oh, just curious. Okay, just curious.
Did you say Vivian Tran teaches one of the courses?
Yeah, Vivan Tran, the 289A.
Yeah, I used to work with her.
Yeah, she teaches 289A. Vivan. She's been teaching for a while in this program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Mm.
So the second year is not in person? Second year class?
No, we have some classes in person. So this is second year class right now. So in the spring, we had the 289B. We had 2 lectures in person for this particular class. I think these 2 classes, I don't know about the bioinformatics, so don't count me on it. But we've had, so these are year 2. So this class is in person. There is some in-person component of the project management class. So these 2 are in person. And then bioethics also, we have some lectures in person. So not all lectures are in person, but many are. I would say a lot is online, but we also have some in person. Like for the capstone, we wanted all the students to be in person doing their presentations rather than doing them over Zoom. It's just not as fun. And then we can also interact with each other and ask, we invited all the year one students to come to this class to ask questions. So we've had this in person at the interdisciplinary science building at SJSU. So yeah, and I think over the years we've had mixed feedback from the students. People don't like to be stuck in traffic and then be having to pay for parking and so on. So we've been trying to figure out just the right balance between in person and online.
And what's the location for in person?
It's at the university. 1 Washington Square, basically. That's the university address, and that's the whole campus. Most of our classes this year or this semester were at the interdisciplinary science building. You can check it out on Google. It's called ISB, but it's part of College of Science. It's the same building. It's actually a brand new building that was the university just, I think, opened in January this year. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Are you in the Bay Area or are you outside the Bay Area?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in Oakland right now.
Oh, Oakland, yeah. Yeah, we've had, I'll be honest, I think this year we've had only 2 lectures in the 289B in person. And then I don't think these 2 classes are in person. And then going back here, the 281B, trying to remember. I taught this class, but now I don't remember if I had any in person. But I do like to have at least personally, I think once a month, if you had 1 class, 1 lecture in person once a month across the program, I think that's the bare minimum I'm striving for, because you really want to meet your fellow students. We're also trying to do more events, so not just classes, but things that can allow you to really network with more people in your program, and also with the instructors and people that are in the Valley. I've also had a lot of people, not a lot, but I've had at least 3 guest lecturers this year that were from the East Coast. So obviously we couldn't do it in person because they were calling in from remotely. But when we have in person, when we have domestic or people that are in the region giving guest lectures, we try to do them in person as well, because that kind of is fun for the people talking about things and also for the students. Here are the different titles of people that graduate from the program. I think this is an important slide to really understand, like, here's what, somebody was saying, oh, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And I think these are the types of roles that you end up with after you graduate from the program. So on the left-hand side, there are a lot of clinical trial type of roles. In the middle, it's like regulatory/quality roles. And on the right, it's more like a mixed bag, scientist or, solutions engineer, project manager, project coordinator, even like some sales roles that you may have. So it's really a mixed bag. Here are the requirements. Somebody asked me how many letters of recommendation. 2 is the minimum requirement. You do need a GPA of 3.0. We do recommend 3.0. The minimum is 2.5. If it's less than 2.5, the university will not accept you in the program. So it won't even come to the department for review. You just won't get accepted. We do need all your transcripts, graduate transcripts if they are applicable. Obviously, you need a bachelor's degree to be in the master's program from an accredited 4-year college. You don't need your letters of recommendation in by July 1st, but you do need your application in by July 1st. And hopefully you can send everything else in, so we're not waiting till the last, because usually the university, I think, gives me like 3 weeks to process all the applications after July 1st, or 2 weeks. So it's a very short window that I have to figure out which students we're going to accept for fall. And your current resume is given up for purpose. Okay. And then here are the websites. If you need to chat with me separately, you can email me. Here's the link to my calendar. but you can always email me and we can talk. So let's talk about, well, let me stop there to see what questions I can answer for you now. We'll do the Cal State Apply if you guys are interested, and I can show you how to do that. Any comments, thoughts? Is everything clear?
Clear.
Okay, good. All right. So let's do Cal State Apply. So this will bring you to this link right here, California State University Office of the Chancellor. And then you just follow the prompts right here. Apply for, and then you select fall 2024, and then you click apply. So I'm not going to go through this because I am not a student, but it will give you the login screen, and then you just follow the prompts. And you can do all your submissions, all your documents and everything. You create an account, and then you're on your way. So if you do this, this doesn't mean you've applied, okay? You still have to pay the $70 fee to really get your application in the system, because till you pay that fee, it doesn't register you fully for that program. Does that make sense? And I think it's still $70. I don't think they've changed that fee. And then, yeah, the deadline is July 1st for this film. Okay. I don't know, Farida, did that answer your question? You were curious how to get to Cal State Apply. I just wanted to show you how to do that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, well, what other questions you guys have? You guys are still hanging out with me, so I guess you found this useful or had more questions.
I found it useful.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback.
Yeah, no, I definitely found it useful as well. I was a little nervous just about the program, and then even just joining this call because I don't have direct clinical research experience, but I feel a lot more confident after speaking with you today and hearing you lecture, and how those soft skills are also really important. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Simran. Absolutely.
Bye.
Okay. I don't have anything else, but feel free to reach out, and I'm here to be a resource for you in anything that you need. Yeah.
Thank you for the
Yeah, thank you
presentation.
so much.
Yeah,
It was
thank you
really
so much.
helpful.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and we're kind of over our time, but it was awesome to have you guys here today. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, I have a last question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
when does in fall it starts? Like,
Oh, when does it start? August 21st, I believe, is kind of our start date. Let me just check it's around that timeline, August, the third week of August, August 19th or the 26th. It's one of those dates is when we'll start.
okay.
We'll probably have orientation the week of August 19th, and we'll start class the week of August 26th.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Cool. All right, we're good?
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
You're welcome.
Have a nice-
Have a good night. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice evening.